This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
What we'll do now is open up to the floor. So if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, either Jose or Carlos, if you could raise your hands and we'll take questions. What we might do, okay, we'll take a question from here, please.
Yeah. My name is Ralf Kusters. I'm a researcher. I'm working in Brussels. I work with a group called IRESEA, which means trying to find economic strategic alternatives. My work these last years was on mining, and I'm not supposed to use the word development, but still I do it. I've got two remarks or questions. First of all, I've been looking mainly at Africa, but also at Bolivia and China. And my first question is, when you in America are thinking about alternatives, are you aware of similar exercises being done in Africa? Because at the level of the African Union, for example, there's quite a bit of work being done on this subject. In one country, one particular country like South Africa as well, they are quite advanced in thinking about the role of the state intervention in the mineral sector. So I know that there has been influences across the ocean, but my first question is, are you aware of this work being done outside of America? Then secondly, and then maybe I'm already out of the very technical explanations that have been done by Mr. Monge and Mr. Pimentel, but it's more like it's on another level. It's about resource sovereignty. What I see in writings of banks like Barclays, or investors like BlackRock, or the mining industry, BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto, De Beers, they all complain about what they call resource nationalism, which in their view is an extremely bad thing, because it makes it complicated for them to have access to natural resources. Now, especially in what Mr. Pimentel has been saying, I hear completely different sound. He talks about national liberation, and he explains how his country has been implementing resource sovereignty, which has been recognized as a right by the UN in the 60s. So my second question then is, how is this very negative appreciation by bankers, investors, institutions, governments like the EU, maybe making your work difficult? How is it limiting your policy space? Thank you.
The questions are for both of the speakers?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to go first?
I would say that regarding basing our own proposals on a clear understanding of the international experience, I would say first that I have to acknowledge that we still tend to be parochial in our thinking, and we should always probably learn more about the international experience experience in order to see what other things have been done in a different way. Now, being parochial, I think we are sort of overcoming little by little this situation, as at least from the point of view of civil society activism and research, there are increasing ways in which civil society at a global level is coming together to discuss the situation, concrete experiences, and broader long-term views regarding the role in the extractive sector in development and well-being for the people. But I think we are still pretty much parochial, and we need to do a lot more. Regarding the specific issues I touched upon, for example, there has been some comparative research and discussion about rent distribution, but I still think that we need to do a lot more regarding the relations between mining investment, rent availability, and the concrete impact on the economics and the social life and the cultures, of the peoples involved. So there's a lot more to be done there. We have the mechanisms, we're not using them with the intensity that we should. Regarding the question of national soberanías, how would you say that? Sovereignty on natural resources, I would say two things. First, that of course the opinion of the companies and the rating agencies and the banks and the multilateral institutions is going to be very critical, because this trend to strengthen the state intervention in the management of resources, to nationalize the rent generated by the resources, and to even in some cases challenge the property of foreign companies over some of the activities in the natural resource sector is clearly running against their interests. So that's, I guess, that somebody that embarks in that path, in that walk of life, knows that that's coming, and that's part of the political process in Latin America. Now, I would say that there is an emerging discussion, at least in Peru, that goes beyond sovereignty over the national resources, and that challenges the dependence on natural resources, even from a progressive or leftist point of view. There is an emerging critique of what is now called a neo-extractivism, which is a progressive, leftist, nationalistic approach to the issue of extractives, but that doesn't challenge, in the end, the centrality of the extractives for our economic and political processes, and that aims at a combination of economic diversification and different institutional frameworks, and that puts the accent on indigenous lands and consultation rights, that puts the accent on long-term environmental impacts and the need to protect the renewable natural resources, and that puts the emphasis on a cultural different approach, a non-extractive, utilitarian, short-term approach to renewable natural resources. No, that's a new thing that is emerging, I would say, within the progressive camp regarding what to do with the extractive sector, no? But yes, of course, nationalism is going to be challenged by private, international, corporate, and state-based interests that were benefiting from the previous generation, from the previous situation.
José,
si Bolivia tiene algunas potencialidades, es la tenencia de los recursos mineros.
If Bolivia has any potential, it's ownership of mineral resources.
Y si pensamos lograr niveles altos de desarrollo, tenemos que utilizar esto, tanto los hidrocarburos como los minerales.
And if we aim to reach a higher standard of living and development, then we have to use these resources, hydrocarbons as much as mining resources.
Pero la nueva concepción política del Estado ha abolido el sistema de concesión minera para plantearse una asociación con el sector privado. sistema de concesión subdividido.
The new political constitution has changed the concession system in order to put forward a new partnership system for mining.
Estos contratos de asociación que está planteando el Estado al sector privado, nacional e internacional contemplan dos aspectos.
The new partnership contracts between the state, the private sector and the national government have two aspects.
Una participación mayoritaria de la renta del Estado y un avance en el proceso de la industrialización de nuestros recursos naturales.
A majority share in the process on the part of the state and an advance in industrialization.
Al no haber el régimen concesionario, recursos naturales no pueden ser puestos en la bolsa de valores o en alguna transacción financiera.
Following this changes to the concessionary regimes, the natural resources can be put on a stock exchange or in private financial transactions.
En todo caso, la seriedad de estos contratos tiene una garantía soberana del Estado boliviano.
In any case, the seriousness of these transactions is guaranteed by the sovereignty of the Bolivian government.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, so should we take a couple of questions? So, man and please. Yeah, if you go.
My name is Madam Islam, I'm a student of Latin American politics. Thank you for both your presentation. I have a question for each of you. I'd also like to ask you first, what is the presence and quality of institutions at the local government level that disseminate these rents to the ground level? Do they exist, and how well or badly do they do their job? And
the quality of the institutions?
Yeah, not just the local government presence itself, but other institutions that work in partnership on behalf of local government to disseminate the rents at the ground level. I want to know the specific actions or activities and policies that the Bolivian state and the Max Party has to address the question of training that you mentioned, specifically regarding to Bolivian individuals that work for renewable in the state mine. I'm aware that there is a problem there, and I don't really know much about what you're actually doing to address it, so that the idea of linking extractive rents to the individual population in order to address inequality is met by the state. So what exactly is being done?
We'll take another question.
Yes, my question is for Pimentel. I was interested on his reference. Sorry, yes, I'm Mark Burton from Manchester. I'm interested in exploring some of the lessons from development in the Andes for rethinking our own local economies in Britain. I was interested in the reference to the philosophy of vivir in Bolivia, which, as I understand it, translates very poorly either into vivir or into living well from the admirer of the textbook, and refers to a fundamental critique of the developmental model. Some commentators have said that the governments in Bolivia and Ecuador are using this terminology as a way of legitimating what is a fairly traditional neo-extractive approach to the economy. And I was wondering just how say thought that the approach to mining would be different from a traditional approach under the philosophy of vivir.
I believe that subnational governments in Peru now, as much as happened in Bolivia when decentralization took place in the 80s, are facing a huge challenge Initially, the challenge has been understood as a challenge to develop capacities to better manage the rent that is generated by the extractive sector and that is reallocated to the subnational government in the ways that we have seen, which again is not only a situation faced by the Peruvian subnational governments, but it has been faced by the Bolivian subnational governments, because there's also a huge portion of the rent still reallocated to the subnational level. The same has been faced in Colombia recently. The new royalty law in Colombia that recentralizes the royalties in the hands of the central government was based on that fundamental critique. The local governments have not demonstrated a capacity to spend the money in a way that responds to the needs of the local populations or the local territories. No? So this issue is very much at the core of the debates regarding what to do with the money. No? And in the end, it's a discussion about a balance of the way decentralization has performed in the countries in Latin America that have embarked on those processes. No? So, I mean, let me give you an example. The local government of the district of San Marcos, where the Antamina, which is so far the largest mining project in Peru, is located, had an annual budget of 500,000 soles up to 2007 or something like that. And then Antamina started paying both income tax because his period of grace ended, and started paying royalties. So that same mayor, with that same accountant, and with that same engineer, and with that same manager, had to spend the next year 240 million soles. 500,000 to 240 million soles. Nobody here in this room has the capacity to jump from one situation to the other in absolute absence of any kind of institutional, centrally designed plan to develop capacities. No? So of course they have faced a enormous challenge. And my point is that out of the data, from a spending point of view, they have responded. Of course they can't spend 100% of what they have. But looking at what they spent 10 years ago, and what they spend now, the capacity development have been amazing. But I think that the situation is much more complex, and it has to do not only with spending the money, and I would say up to this point, not mainly with spending the money, because the new challenge is that of territorial management. The new debate in Peru is how do you give a role and a place to extractive activities in a territory? So how these local governments and regional governments are now embarking into this new mandate of the laws, which tells or says that they have to do economic and ecological zoning, and based on ecological and economic zoning, participatory, no? If possible, as much as possible, they have to create this subnational legislation on what we call in Spanish ordenamiento territorial, that I never know, land planning or land management plans or something like that. No? So I would say that's really the challenge today. Not only spend more money and spend it well, but to manage the territories in a participatory manner. No? And therefore to make decisions regarding what kind of extractive activities, how many extractive projects are viable from an environmental, social, and economic point of view in a given territory in light of again, the D word, some kind of developmental plan. That's the official name we have, the planes de desarrollo. Unfortunately, there should be the well-being plans eventually. We'll have that as the official denomination. So I think that as notable as the challenge of how to spend has been so far, the real challenge is how to do land planning based and developmental planning based on zoning at the economic and ecological levels with an eye on social civil society participation in those processes. That's, at least in Peru, that's the emerging challenge. I know that that's going on also in Colombia. I know less about that in the case of Bolivia.
La actual estructura de la minería tiene dos sectores que pueden señalarse la tendencia futura.
The current mining sector has two principal sectors which can indicate future tendencies.
El sector cooperativo, que significa un 30%, donde los accionistas de las empresas son los propios trabajadores.
The cooperativist sector, which composes 30%, in which the miners themselves are shareholders.
El sector estatal, que va recuperándose después del neoliberalismo, actualmente un 6% de la producción minera, pero cuyas bases de constitución es la participación directa de los trabajadores en la organización de la empresa.
And the state sector, which is recovering from the neoliberal phase. It's 6% of the sector at the moment, so the participation in that sector is based directly on the participation of the miners.
Pensamos que una democracia que excluya a los trabajadores de la administración de las empresas no es democracia.
We say that democracy which excludes workers from participating in their conditions is not true democracy.
El destino de las empresas está en manos de los trabajadores.
The future or the destiny of companies is in the hands of the workers.
Para nosotros el concepto de vivir bien básicamente significa la armonía de la sociedad con la naturaleza y de los hombres entre sí.
For us, the concept of vivir bien, living well, basically refers to harmony between society and nature and among humankind.
Este es un concepto que naturalmente se está elaborando, se está construyendo las bases. No es nada fácil después de años y siglos en la cual la competencia del hombre con el hombre era el vivir el desarrollo.
This is a concept which we're still developing and working on the basis for. It's not easy after many years and centuries of competition between men.
Es un problema muy difícil. Pensamos que solamente se puede superar, lograr este objetivo en la medida que haya más justicia social.
It's a difficult problem. We believe that it can only be overcome with an emphasis on social justice.
En cuanto a la distribución de los recursos económicos de la explotación de estos, habría que señalar que hay dos distribuciones actualmente en Bolivia. Uno, la del petróleo, cuyos impuestos directos son el 50% del valor de los ingresos.
In terms of the distribution of the economic resources resulting from extractive industries, these are divided into two main sources. One is petroleum, which forms 50% of the direct taxes.
Más el 25% de la utilidad de las empresas.
La ganancia.
Plus 25% of the profits, the earnings of the companies.
Estos recursos de los del petróleo, un 19% van a los departamentos, a las regiones.
Of the resources from petroleum, 19% go to the different departments.
Y el resto va al Estado central.
The rest goes to the central state.
Entonces hay una política de redistribución de los ingresos a nivel nacional y regional.
So there's a redistributive policy at local and regional level, at national and regional level.
Es por eso que el gobierno ha podido implementar algunas políticas de redistribución, como es el bono escolar, el bono a la vejez, el bono a la madre gestante.
It's for this reason that the government has been able to implement some direct payments, such as direct payments to school children, to elderly people, and to pregnant and new mothers.
Y las regiones tienen recursos suficientes para plantearse su propio desarrollo regional.
And the regions have sufficient resources to plan out their own development.
En el caso de la minería, hay un impuesto llamado regalía que va directamente a las regiones de cerca del 7% del valor bruto de las exportaciones.
In the case of mining, there's a form of tax, the regalía, which is composed of 7% of the gross value, which goes directly to the regions.
Y las empresas mineras están pagando un impuesto del 36% de sus ganancias.
And the companies are also paying a tax to the value of 36% of their earnings.
Este impuesto va al gobierno central.
This tax goes to the central government.
Podríamos señalar que todavía el gobierno tiene un disociamiento con el sistema de educación superior.
On the subject of training, we could indicate that the government still experiences some dissociation from the tertiary education sector.
Las universidades estatales tienen autonomía de gestión.
The state universities are under free management.
Durante mucho tiempo se dijo que la minería ha muerto y las universidades dejaron de producir recursos técnicos para la minería.
For a long time it was said that mining was a dead sector, and so universities stopped producing people who were technically qualified to work in mining.
Hoy tenemos un gran déficit de recursos humanos para la minería.
Meaning that today we have a great deficit in terms of human resources for working in mining.
Y por lo tanto el gobierno está buscando acercarse a acordar con las universidades la formación de estos recursos, pero paralelamente va formando escuelas de capacitación minera.
So the government is seeking closer relationships with universities in order to build this capacity, but at the same time establishing schools for mining technical skills.
Okay, so any further questions? So if we maybe take these three questions. We start.
Okay, I'm just going to get some housekeeping out of the way and a little impertinence. I just want to know about the presence of, within this symposium, presence of affected communities and their voice. I don't see representation. I see there's an NGO coming in this afternoon by Skype. I should ask Carlos, his DESCO is what its primary funding, is it state or is it mining company? I can imagine from what was said about Commonwealth. And to the organisers, the question of the representation of community affected, where's the voice of them? As the day wears on and we hear from mining companies, in some ways where their funding comes from is clearer, but you'll hear their rhetoric and you'll recognise that more and more the need for the voice of affected communities should become obvious. Sorry,
is that your question?
Yeah, that was, yeah. So the question was to Carlos about primary funding for DESCO. Is it an NGO?
Yeah.
And I think I know. I think I know what Commonwealth is.
Yeah.
I could ask a question about the representation of the relationship between free, prior, and informed consent. That coming into the Bolivian system.
Okay. Where the other questions were, gentlemen here?
Yeah. My question was regarding the spending capacity of subnational governments. I was wondering if there are any specific mechanisms by which the central government has to negotiate, or by which the subnational government has to negotiate with the central government, and what are those? If the central government only allocates the money and doesn't care, or do they actually put more rules for specific projects, or where? And also, if you had specific examples of subnational spending being efficient and successful, as you mentioned, because, well, I live in Peru, and we keep hearing that subnational governments are a failure in terms of spending capacity, and I've worked in Cajamarca extensively, and I've had troubles finding really efficient and useful programs even for local people. So I was wondering if you could explain more on the question about that.
Is that a third question?
My name is Catherine Tomlinson. My question is for Dr. Marquez. And I was interested in whether and what kind of debates there are in Peru regarding the role of the companies themselves, both mining and oil and gas, with regards to this issue of local capacity on spending these revenues. So, whether there are debates about whether companies should be involved in building that capacity and what kind of role they have at all. Because that's essentially quite a big impact of their operations on local areas.
Would you like to just, do you want to deal with the gentleman's? I'll say something as well.
Okay, on my side, I'm a member of an international NGO, and I'm a member of a Peruvian NGO. In both cases, we do have working relations with local NGOs, with other local NGOs, and with social movements, but in no way I have any kind of representation of the local communities. That has to be absolutely clear. And so I don't pretend to have any kind of representation of local voices. It's another debate that presents me why they are here, but no pretension on that. But it's very clear. We have a voice, but it's our voice, they have their voice. Second, spend a couple of questions regarding regarding consultation. That's a very important debate now in Peru. There are established official consultation mechanisms now regarding three things. First, when a company presents an environmental impact assessment to be evaluated and accepted or rejected by the national authorities, one of the key components is the so-called audience. No? And the experience has proven that those audiences very rarely work. Usually the material, the technical material presented to the people is too complex, the time is too small, the procedure is not very, very open, no? And usually they don't really, I think, represent, in most cases, no? A valid, acceptable consultation process, and they end up being valid by the local populations. Second, there are consultation rights regarding what to do with the money. I mean, those monies go to the local governments, and those monies are therefore subject to the participatory mechanisms regarding annual budgeting at the national level. And in the third place, and this is a hotly disputed thing in Peru, local governments claim that according to their law, they can consult the citizens on issues of local interest. So in the cases of Tambo Grande in Piura, in the case of Majas, also in the highlands of Piura, and in the case of Tia Maria in Arequipa, three cases in which mining projects in fact were stopped, but by local mobilization and social conflict, the mayors appealed to their own legislation to launch consultation processes regarding those mining projects. And the companies said that was illegal, and the central government also declared that that was illegal, but that's something that has been going on. Today, around the Conca conflict, the local social grassroots organizations in the provinces of Sedimín, Pampamarca, and Cajamarca have announced that they are going to organize a consultation process around the viability of that project. And the regional government has said that it's going to get involved, because it also has laws that says that they can consult the citizens on issues of their interest. And already both the Ombudsman Office and the National, how do you say, the Fiscalia, the National Prosecutor has said that that would be illegal, so this is going to end up in the Constitutional Tribunal. Is going to be a legal and political fight in the incoming months and years, I would say. No? And of course now we have a consultation law, and the bylaws have already been approved, and everything is stuck within the executive, because there's a strong disagreement between the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Energy and Mines regarding, and this is going to sound like a provocation to the debate, but who is an Indian in Peru? Who is an indigenous people in Peru who deserves to be consulted? Who has the right to be consulted? And in the end, the fight is around a list that says these organizations in these territories represent indigenous peoples, with the Ministry of Energy and Mines challenging a large extent of that list because it would have an impact on the projects that they are promoting. So the new debate in Peru is about the implementation of this consultation law and bylaw. But by the way, it has been challenged by the national indigenous organizations as violating the principles of the ILO 169 and whatnot. So that's a big emerging debate now in Peru. But the process is stalled so far because of this disagreement inside the government. Spending capacities. I was not referring to the quality of the investments. I was referring to the capacity to spend in relation to the amount of money that you receive. That's been documented, that has increased. Now, second, all public investments in Peru are subject to a control mechanism called the SNIP, the National System. The National System for Public Investments, which is a quality control mechanism run by the Ministry of the Economy. Because of the political pressures of the subnational governments, it has been decentralized and relaxed to a certain extent. No? So it does exercise some control of the quality of investments, but it also allows absolutely ridiculous projects, no? And a certain amount of the money is being spent in things that have really no justification in poverty-ridden areas. You have mayors building 7th-floor buildings for themselves with an elevator, but the town has no electricity. Things like that, temporary pools in the middle of the jungle to swim in warm water, and there's no sewage and no running water in the city. So there are lots of examples of really ridiculous and justified. No? Now, there are also lots of examples of mayors investing in agricultural infrastructure, communications, water sanitation, and this and that. But that brings me back to my original point. We still haven't had enough time, I think, and enough data to make a serious assessment of what has been the concrete impact of the expenditure of those rents in the quality of life, well-being, whatever, no? Of the peoples at the local level. There are some initial studies, some of the NGOs I work with have done some assessments in the Cusco region. John Crabtree, an older member of the Peru Support Group, has just finished a report on the impact of gas rent in certain provinces and districts in Cusco. I still have to read the draft and provide some comments on that. No? So we're starting to produce that data, but we really, I think, don't know yet. No? But that's a very valid point, and there's a distinction between having the capacity to spend and being able to prove that you have spent wisely. And that second is open to a great debate. Finally, yes, there is a discussion about the roles of companies. First, the roles of companies themselves. How do mining companies and other companies in Peru rate from a comparative perspective regarding their corporate social responsibility? Are they doing the most they can do? Are they doing better than in other countries? Are they being cheap and not doing well enough? That's an open debate that would also require a comparative analysis. Second, in Peru there is no local content policy. In Peru, in the mining code, there's just one phrase that says, oh, we hope that companies buy from the locals. That's it. No? So the question is, are they making their best effort to really buy from the locals and therefore establish productive change and generate process of capital accumulation and knowledge and technological transfer to the local economic agents? That depends on the will of the companies. So some, for example, Yanacocha, which is challenged from many angles, Cajamarca and nationally, but has, I suppose, one of the two best local content strategies and policies in Peru. The one thing they do well is the local content policy. Nantamina is supposedly having the best local content strategy, meaning they identify local agents, they train local economic agents, they a long time are increasing the amount of goods and services acquired from the local agents. So at least they have a policy, they have a strategy. Some others have none. Some others just say, okay, what's more efficient for me? I get an international supplying company and get the food from Chile or Switzerland. Well, let's do it if it's going to be cheap and easy and I don't care about the locals. And there's a conceptual debate. Do companies that have more local content feel less obliged to do corporate social responsibility? Do companies that have no local content at all feel the need to spend a lot in direct social expenditures to compensate for the lack of articulation to the local economic agents? That's a conceptual question, and we still have no data to do that. I'm personally trying to start a project around that. And there finally there have been some efforts to get the companies to really provide training to the local mayors to spend better the money that they themselves are generating through royalties and taxes. And I think that has worked well in a small number of cases, but usually there's conflicts and political distance and bickering between the companies and the mayors, so I don't think that has performed well in general terms. No? I think that should be a responsibility of the national state to do some serious capacity building for subnational governments to allow them to spend more and to spend better.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. I just wanted to, from an organiser's point of view, respond to the question from the gentleman regarding community leaders' representation. What we've tried to do with the conference is the aims of the conference to discuss policies around development as these relate to the extractive sector. We've tried to get representatives from the different sectors that are involved in those policies. We do have José Díaz Chávez speaking this afternoon, who is a representative of the NGO Corporation, which I understand does work with communities and how they're affected by mining. In the next session also, Carlos Morque is going to deal directly with the issue of human rights and how those are important. In the next session on the issue of minimising the detrimental impacts of extractive industries. And I'd also just say that we did invite Merta Vasquez, who is the lawyer for the NGO Vivir, which works directly with communities as well. But unfortunately we found out last week that she was unable to get a visa to come. But we do have participation of José Díaz Chávez later on, so hopefully that does provide a balance in terms of the different speakers that we have. It's now 20 past 11, so we are due to break. But there was the question about free, prior, informed consent, which maybe if Jose could briefly address that. And then we'll break. Maybe if we just have 10 minutes for the coffee break, because we're slightly running over.
Sí, hay que clarificar dos tipos de derecho en cuanto a la tierra. El derecho agrícola sobre el suelo y el derecho minero sobre el subsuelo.
So it's important to clarify that there are two kinds of rights involved in territory rights. There's soil rights, agriculture and so on, and subsoil rights to minerals.
Cuando hay sobreposición del derecho del suelo y el subsuelo, tiene que encontrarse un acuerdo entre el agricultor y el minero.
So when you have these two rights coming into contact, you have to come to some agreement between people working in agriculture and those working in mining.
Sin embargo, la actividad minera puede tener impacto más allá de los propietarios.
Nonetheless, mining activity can have an impact far beyond the proprietors.
Para lo cual la legislación boliviana requiere la licencia ambiental y la licencia social.
And so, Bolivian legislation requires an environmental license and a social license.
Y en ese sentido el Estado tiene que hacer las consultas respectivas.
So, in those cases, the state has to carry out those respective consultations.
En Bolivia no ha habido problemas grandes sobre este tema.
In Bolivia, there haven't been large problems in this sense.
En general, el deseo de las comunidades es participar en la actividad minera.
In general, communities wish to participate in mining activities.
En forma directa a través de cooperativas o en forma de obreros de las empresas.
Either in direct form as cooperativists or by working for the mining companies.
Okay, so I'd just like to thank Carlos and Jose again for their contributions. We'll now break for coffee. Coffee's being served through there, and if we could come back here at 11:25 something.